interesting. There's a couple of balanced budget amendments going to be introduced in the Senate.
Yes.
What separates you and Senator Lee's from the others?
Mike Lee's proposal is a great proposal, and to evade or go around his balanced budget amendment takes a 2/3 vote. The other balanced budget can be evaded by a 51% vote, and I don't think changes it much from the status quo. The other one says that in times of military conflict, you can evade it with a 51% vote. But you know, there are many people who think we're going to be, or they propose we'll be in perpetual conflict forever, which basically means the balanced budget amendment wouldn't do much. It wouldn't have any supermajority restrictions then.
Senator Kathleen Walter from Newsmax. Sorry that I'm late. Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak appears ready to resign. What do you think is next for Egypt?
You know, I don't know. I hope it will be orderly and that we won't have chaos. There have been revolutions like ours that worked out great, you know, where you have ours wasn't a peaceful revolution, but it was a revolution where you had stability of government almost immediately. I think a lot of that was because we had a tradition of hundreds of years of state governments in our colonial governments in our country. France didn't work out so well, so you always kind of worry when you're in the middle of upheaval that you get blood running in the streets, and I hope that won't happen for them.
What grade do you give the Obama administration for its response?
Yeah. I don't know if they can control events one way or the other. I think it's somewhat outside the control of what they can do or affect.
Paul, Kevin Brett from Campaign for Liberty. Given your good relationship with your fathers, I understand that you are sharing living quarters with them currently. What was it like for you to see your father as a voice in the political wilderness for so long? And what have you taken from that? Anything you think you might apply to your term in the Senate?
Right. We are still on good terms. We have been sharing an apartment for a month or two now, but so that's going fine. Yeah, I think it was interesting growing up and seeing that he would take principled stands. You know, one of my first memories was that I went with him to the 1976 convention when he supported Reagan. There were only 4 U.S. congressmen who did, and that was a stand that he took on principle, and it wasn't politically expedient because the easy way out would have been to support Ford in that year. But there have been many times like that.
And then you credit a lot of your success to the Tea Party. What would you suggest to Tea Party activists moving forward into 2011 and also advocacy organizations such as Campaign for Liberty?
All right. You can't let up at all, and you really have to keep the pressure on those that you think you elected to do right, because many of them will forget pretty quickly if they're up here, what they promised you, and you need to keep their feet to the fire. We also need more. We don't have enough yet, and you need to encourage and write letters and send emails to the Republican leadership in the House and tell them $35 billion just isn't enough.
Senator, the House GOP wants $74 billion in spending cuts. You want $500 billion. Do you think you'll be able to meet in the middle?
I hope that we'll get more significant cuts, and the reason is that if we get what the Republicans are proposing in the House, it will add $3 trillion to the debt over 5 years. President Obama's plan adds more, $3.8 trillion, but it's just too much. I don't think a country can keep adding trillions of dollars of debt, and I fear the consequences if we don't act more boldly.
Are you confident that your cuts could pass?
Yeah, if we can get enough votes. But, we aren't quite there yet as far as having a number of people who will believe in that. See, because you have to believe philosophically that government should be smaller. See, I think government should not be in the business of education in Washington. It should be done by the states and localities. So I believe in the Republican platform when Reagan ran, which was to get rid of the Department of Education. And that was our platform for many years, but many have abandoned that. In about 2002, 2003, the Republicans actually doubled the size of the Department of Education by passing No Child Left Behind. So some have forgotten that message or now disagree with that message. If you're only going to look at this much of the budget, they're only looking at non-military discretionary spending. That's all the president's looking at. It's all the Republicans are looking at. The president freezes it at 2010 levels and does nothing but add debt. The Republicans freeze it at 2008 levels, but it still adds enormous debt. The only way you balance a budget is you have to look at the whole budget. And that's truly the compromise I told out there to mixed response, was that you have to look at military spending.
You're putting together a plan also to fix Social Security. Can you tell us about that?
It's secret.
Can you give us a little insight?
No, it's coming, and it's some of what I mentioned. I mean, you have to change the age of eligibility, and we will do it gradually. We've always talked in the campaign and since then about changing the age of for people 55 and under. and that way people can make plans to do it. But if you ask these young people out here, do you even expect you're going to get Social Security? Most of them will tell you they don't expect to get it. And then if you ask them, well, we could preserve the system by when you're 25 now. If you have to wait till you're 70, can you live with that? If it saves the country from financial ruin, I think they'll say yes, but I think most people will say yes. And people in Washington are very fearful of saying that because they think anybody who touches Social Security will be promptly unelected. But I even think that's untrue. I think people are ready to hear a solution.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Do you think Audit the Fed will pass a full audit this year?
Well, I was amazed. It really boggled my mind that we had 300 and some odd co-sponsors in the House, but it shows you how the system works. You can have an enormous amount of support, and then through leadership and finagling, you ended up not getting it. You got a watered-down version of it. So, we're working hard in the Senate with it, and we'll get co-sponsors. I think we had 37 votes in the Senate, so we were a ways away. And in the House, will all those 330 sign on again, or will they just say, oh, the other audit was enough?
Do any of your Republican colleagues stand with you on the Patriot Act, against it?
You'll have to ask them. I don't know yet.
On defense, should America have troops in South Korea, and do you consider that America has an empire around the world in a negative way?
I think ultimately we do have to look at how many military bases we have around the world, how many wars we're in, and how much they cost. I think you can do it and still have a strong national defense. I think that you can still protect a country against terrorism by having more small and mobile forces that can go and protect us or stop terrorism from occurring. But I think large land-scale wars are maybe not the best way to approach terrorism. The General Jones has said that there's less than 100 Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. We have 100,000 troops. If you took that ratio to World War II and said we were going to have 100,000 to 100, we would have had like 50 million people over there from the United States. I mean, no one would have understood that kind of ratio. So I think you could have many less soldiers in Afghanistan and still control Afghanistan.
I mean, what about these bases around the world? And are we talking about having the defense budget? I mean, do we close the bases in Germany? Do we close
Right.
the
Our
bases
proposal was to cut 6% from the 2010 budget for military.
That seems pretty small by your own conception, though.
Well, the number's a lot larger, so it's still it's quite a bit of the money. I think it's over 100 billion of the money comes from there because 6% of a very large number. The military expenditures are like over 700 billion. So you can cut 90% of something that's only 10 billion, and it's not very much money. So it is still a significant amount. It's also significant in the sense that we haven't gotten any conservatives to sign on to it yet. And it ultimately is the compromise. Conservatives have to decide that there is some waste in the military budget, and also they have to decide practically you can't balance the budget by looking at this much of the budget. And both the Democrats and the Republicans are making this mistake. President Obama looks at this much. House Republicans look at this much. You've got to look at the whole thing, really.
Are they afraid of being accused of being soft on tariffs? Last question. Are they afraid of being accused of being soft on?
I think everybody is, because people will sometimes distort things and call you unpatriotic and say you don't care about your country. But I think national defense is the most important thing we do up here. But I don't think that means that every dollar is sacred.
Thank you all so much
Thanks.
for coming.